I followed the heart, right? Follow the heart of I knew, and it was a tough conversation with my wife of like, hey, I'm taking a massive leap. I want to quit the golden handcuffs, really good salary, great vacation time, great organization, great benefits. And I wanted to take the massive leap. And as scary as it was, and as scary as the 4 years I've been, with some, financial insecurity, ups and downs, it's entrepreneurial life. She was like, go find it, go find your happiness. And she sees me come home on a Friday like I did, last week, and she gets it. She gets it. They make me cry this morning.
Hello, and welcome to the Fresh Perspectives podcast, where our intention is growing together and leading with love. I'm Peter Callahan, and I believe we each have incredible capacity to continue to learn and evolve as individuals and as a species, and bring way more love and a lot less fear into the world and our daily lives. Changing can be hard, and I've found that even if nothing changes, having the courage to see our challenges from a fresh perspective can change everything. I'm so glad you're here. And you just got to hear from Ralph Riccio, who I am so grateful to introduce here and have on the show. Just a little bit about Ralph. As a kid, he grew up watching his dad and twin brother run their small retail clothing store in Southington, Connecticut. You'll hear some more about that. Seeing the joy and frustration his dad had in running the business, he became obsessed with learning what it took to run a truly great organization. Some of the same curiosities that I have. Ralph actually spent most of his career so far working on leadership teams of organizations of all shapes and sizes and building strong, cohesive teams, really helping them to identify solutions and overcome obstacles, ultimately driving revenue and stronger team performance. So most of these roles have been in the nonprofit sector for Ralph, including many years at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So some really meaningful work here. And through those experiences, he really understands the ups and downs of working with individuals, teams, and running a successful business. And because of his dad's business, Ralph has a passion for small and medium-sized businesses, helping them implement long-lasting change that gets them better results, which is what Ralph is doing now. He is an EOS. You'll hear us reference that a lot. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So he's an EOS implementer, and he works with companies and leadership teams to help them get everything they really want out of their business. And if Ralph isn't getting to collaborate with a client, you can find him entertaining friends and family, cooking an Italian recipe at home, or traveling with his wife, Michelle, and 3 stepkids, Grace, Kyle, and Lee. And at some point, ask Ralph about Truck Driver Friday. It's his favorite day of the year, and you're bound to get an invite. And in this conversation, Ralph and I talked about riding the ups and downs of growing up in an entrepreneurial household, listening to what brings you alive and what authenticity and being honest and true to yourself can really look like, the importance of caring about people, and the immense value of supportive relationships in our life. Ralph then walks us through some of the main tools of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and how small changes can really make a huge impact, which is, of course, one of the themes of many of our conversations. And lastly, I'm so grateful to Ralph for sharing some of the really personal and vulnerable stories with us that he did. I found them really inspiring, and I hope you do too. So please keep it here. All right. Well, good morning, Ralph. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Me too. It's kind of funny how we met in the throes of COVID. I'm just remembering back.
Yeah.
Looking at real estate. But I know we were talking about entrepreneurship as well, and sort of both growing up in homes and families with entrepreneurship as part of the environment that we were living in. And I'm just curious to hear how you got started. What parts of your journey sort of have led you to where you are today?
For me, I grew up with watching my dad run his own clothing store. Him and his twin brother had a clothing store in Southington, and just watching really the ups and the downs. And I mean, my dad loved what he did, and I think he loved the people more than he loved the business, though he did truly love the business too. But watching them go to work every day with the passion that they had for the work they were doing, for meeting people, I absolutely loved it. But I saw the highs and the lows. I mean, I was a kid when they had to close the doors, but I vividly remember when the big malls were coming to town, and what that did to the in the mid '80s, what that did to the downtown communities, and it really started to shutter doors. And I remember the frustration and the sadness that they felt. They had to close those doors. They couldn't keep up with the Gap and the other stores. And even my mom, we were a bunch of teenagers then, and she would sneak us to the mall and, get us a pair of Gap jeans, and we have to hide them at the house because my dad was like, "Wait, why aren't you buying Levi's?" Right? Levi's
Mm.
weren't cool, and it is a kid, and so we wanted Gap jeans. But you know, to some degree, we fed into the problem because we got bought into that. And so you missed those downtowns. And so they had to close their doors and couldn't do it anymore. And I think I was a sophomore in high school when they closed their doors for good. I had a couple older brothers, older sister, I have a twin sister. And we all shopped there. It was men's, women's, children's clothing store. And they had to close those doors. And it was tough to watch. And I didn't realize it, but what I watched my father and my uncle do was leadership and people development. They were so passionate about the people that worked there. My dad died in 2010. They closed the door in the mid '80s, and just last week I was on Facebook in a local Southington group, and somebody posted a picture of my dad and my uncle in the comments of what a great store, what great people. I loved going there. I might get the chills thinking about it, right?
Mm.
What great people. Oh, I used to work there, loved working for them. I mean, you're talking 30 years after they closed the doors, and I still meet people today who are like, I knew your mom and dad. I knew your dad and your uncle. We shopped at the store all the time. It's really humbling to hear that because to me, that was their passion that came through. And any way that I could try and carry that out, I think is what I've tried to do in all of my roles of leadership, working with people. That my passion was about my people that I worked with, and it was whatever mission I was focused on as well. But the people I worked with was really what it was all about. It was a long way around the barn, man.
No, that's
Long
that's
way.
beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you, Ralph.
Uh,
Yeah, the people. And
yeah.
I want to come back to this point that you kind of led with there. Like they loved the people even more than the business. I think there's a bunch of themes in there. And as you're describing enough, I did get curious because we're going to talk about business and get into leadership. It's a
Yeah.
lot of what I love to talk about. And I'm just curious a little bit of what you were like as a kid. If there's any moments that come to mind or just sort of who you were, because it sounds like your brother was helping more with the store than you were, right? Like, what were you into back then? I'm just curious if there might be some pieces that'll filter forward into what you're doing now.
Yeah, that's a great question. Never really considered that. As a kid, I think I was kind of the class clown a little bit. I was the youngest of five kids. And so I was just kind of goofy, kind of always looking for the fun time, always looking to have a good time wherever that took me. I didn't get into a lot of trouble. Somehow I wasn't that
Mm.
youngest kid who got into a lot of trouble most of the time, but I definitely was having fun. My cousin always told the story. He called me Ralphie Goes to Hollywood. I don't know why, but he just thought like I was he was an older cousin by, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And he just thought I was a funny kid, loved my energy, always thought I was entertaining. And so that's kind of what I was as a
Mm.
kid. And it's kind of where I've owned the personality. It is who I am. I will always try to find the fun things and whatever you're doing, even though work is serious. And I've worked in organizations where we're, you know, raising money to cure cancer or cure diabetes or cystic fibrosis. I don't mean you can't have fun doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's serious work. Where I wasn't a heart surgeon, so I could do that. So
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
I hope even
that's
heart surgeons can have fun. It's like you said, it's as appropriate, right? When it
it's an
makes
appropriate
sense.
level of fun, right? When
Yeah.
you can do it. I think that's the way. I think we got to love what we're doing. We get one shot at this run around the sun, as they say, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, enjoy it, love it. I want people to enjoy whatever they're doing.
Definitely. It's
Yeah.
awesome. And it sounds like nature, nurture, you were able to cultivate a good amount of that as a kid. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you had a pretty impressive balance from what I'm hearing too. I think I was probably a little bit less fun. I'd be the class clown, but I was a little bit angry inside and cynical,
Yeah.
so I didn't get into a bunch of trouble either because I was sort of clever enough to
Yeah.
know where to push and where not to. But it sounds like you were even more lighthearted and playful while still having enough. The word that's coming to my mind is responsibility and sort of perspective, one of our keywords here on the Fresh Perspectives podcast, but just knowing, where the boundaries are and the lines are, having that awareness to try and, whether we're not being intentional about it as kids, right? But all right, I'm seeing the world clearly enough. I'm understanding consequences to whatever degree. Certainly something I hope helping to impart as a parent. No idea how that's going, but it's just interesting the way you relate to life.
Yeah, no, I think responsibility is really key, and I think back even to as a teenager in college or even in high school, I get into some trouble. Your friends are experimenting, you're experimenting a little bit, and I certainly did. I've got teenagers in high school now, and I can watch with an eye of knowing what they're likely up to, and what we always talk about our family today is I think I just learned was responsibility, how to be accountable for your actions, right? You make you take an action, there's a consequence if the action doesn't go correctly, or if you do something wrong, there's consequence. And I learned that really early on. I remember thinking back to my friendships, and I was always the one who was making sure everybody was safe. Who's driving, who's getting in the car, where are you going to college? Are you walking off with somebody? I guess I was parenting a little bit more than I probably should have as a teenager, but it served me well. And I just want to make sure everybody's having fun, go have fun, but be safe doing it. And it was a conversation I had with my 17-year-old just last week. You're in high school, I want you to have fun, but there are safe ways to have fun, not 17-year-old, not fully formed frontal lobes kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Of course. That's great that you can have those conversations. And I'm also hearing the word care, like you care about people, want to have their back. And to me, this is one of the ultimate themes of leadership. Do people feel like there's a sincere care there? And my experience is kind of a recovering jerk, as I was just so insecure and so worried about others' judgment or people liking me, how I was perceived, that I was getting in my own way of just sincerely caring and trying to support others in a genuine way that I hope I'm better at now, Ralph. But it's really awesome to hear. And it makes a lot of sense why you're so good at what you do now, that you've sort of had this care that's carried through, and you've just been experimenting, to use the word you were just speaking to, of all different ways to do it. My brother, so we both, I know, have worked with our brothers in the past, and my brother's sort of theme, I think my mom kind of came up with it, but is taking fun seriously. Much more so than me. He had that lighthearted, it really matters to enjoy yourself, and what you're doing is less important than how you're doing it, right? Having this attitude of enjoyment. And I just know from the work I do, Ralph, so many people have a really tough time, myself included, staying in touch with that and trying to hold things, be responsible, but hold things lightly enough to be playful and not feel like everything in life is just work and something to survive or get through.
Yeah. Well, and I think authenticity, right? When you said care, I mean, it's about being authentic. And listen, there's times I get it right, and there's times I get it way wrong.
Sure.
I think we all do that, and that's remembering this perspective again. That word, right? That we are all human beings, and I've had incidents where I thought I was doing the right thing, and boy, it didn't play right. And others' perspective was that it wasn't the right thing, right? And so, being as authentic to yourself as you can. And I struggle with the same insecurities that you talk about. There's probably a period for me that I think in college, I was really mad, angry phase. I don't know what the heck it was about, but I do look back and think on that. And again, it was about try being authentic to yourself. And I struggle with that insecurity even today, probably who I'm talking to or who I'm working with. Right. I mean, I have a ton of respect for people who've put these businesses together, these CEOs, these big companies, and there's some days I'm like, boy, do I have what it takes, right? But I have my perspective. What I love to do is hear others and bring that out of them, right? And I think it's just we live each day being our authentic selves. I love what your mom said. That's serious fun. I think it's super cool, and it is. It's like you can have fun and do your work. I have a client, love watching him work with his team. They have a $25 million business. And he built this business from the ground up, but man, they have fun. It is one of their core values. One of their 5 core values is have fun, because he wants everybody to enjoy what they're doing. If you're not, you're not going to get your best out of it. And that's what it is for me too.
Yes.
Same thing.
Amen.
Yeah.
Ralph.
Yeah.
Amen. I've given a presentation called Get More Done and Have More Fun. I'm all about the
Right.
and. You don't have to take away from each other, right? The
You do
but
not,
erases it.
they feed each other, right? They
Yes.
absolutely feed each other. If you're enjoying what you're doing, that's why it comes to passion for me, right? Having that passion for what you do and love what you do, never work a day in your life because you're gonna have fun doing it. You know, I had a session on Friday and I should have been exhausted. I'm on all in front of my clients for 8, 9 hours. I'm teaching context, I'm facilitating, I'm coaching through, and I should have been exhausted. I came home, I was like, okay, let's go for a 40-mile run because I was just so juiced by the energy in that room and having so much fun working. So it's pretty incredible.
Yes. For the record, you do ultramarathon. Did you go for a 40-mile run? Because that I still can't even.
No, again, 40-mile car ride, maybe.
Okay.
No, no. The longest I've done a couple half marathons.
Yeah, same.
And
Same.
it's been a while. Like the old knees are not what they used to be. So
Totally. I count combining half marathons means we've run a marathon.
I've run a marathon for sure.
Boxes checked. Total if you add it together.
Total together for sure.
And one thing I do, I love to channel whoever might be listening and the skeptical or just the resistance to this. So I just want to bring this up as another conversation piece, Ralph, and maybe we can move into sort of how you chipped away at finding this love, this passion that you experience. And I have a lot of that now too. I'm really grateful. And I've talked about that in a couple of previous episodes, but just being able to acknowledge, for me, I still have plenty of days or at least periods of the day where I still feel like I'm working and I'm doing only what I have chosen to do very intentionally over a decade of running my own business almost. Right. And it still can be challenging for me so I have some inner resistance to that never work a day in my life. Like, well, it would still look different for me if I wasn't remotely worried about income and revenue. Right. And I like to ask clients that question. But so anyway, I'm just curious what comes up for you, because I know you don't mean that you're just floating on cloud nine in a total flow state every hour of every day.
No, I definitely got to work. There's highs and lows. There's anxieties. We're in our own business. We've got to fish. And there's days where you're like, all right, business is well, income is good. And there's days where it's like, oh, wait, I got to keep generating business, working, doing that. I will talk to anybody about what I do because I love what I do. And so it doesn't feel like work. Now there's days, and before we jumped on here, I was looking at QuickBooks, and that's not something I love to do. In the US, we talk about a tool called Delegate and Elevate. How do you delegate all those things so that you can elevate that you don't like to do or don't love to do, so you can elevate yourself to those things you love to do that are within your unique ability that you love to do. And so we use that tool. We help people with that tool to understand it. How do I start to do those things? So, at some point I'll delegate off all of my financial stuff to a bookkeeper or something. And so it's really to getting to your place where you're doing what you love to do. What I love to do is be with my clients or be out talking to people about it. My wife laughed that last week I golfed. I had 3 golf tournaments last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? And I'm not I am nowhere near a great golfer at all. I enjoy being out there. And she was like, oh yeah, rough week for you. I said, well, it is really, truly business development. I mean, I talked about what I do with a whole lot of people last week. It was a great opportunity for me to talk about the work that I'm passionate about with the kinds of people that I want to work with. And so I was working last week, but I was loving what I was doing. I was golfing and talking about EOS. And so that's kind of how I see it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great, Ralph.
Yeah,
that's great. Delegate and elevate. All right. So we're going to get into EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System for those following along at home. But let's maybe keep the story going first, Ralph, if you're up for it. Like how, you've had all these different roles. You don't have to go through your whole, LinkedIn profile, but I'm just kind of curious what the evolution has been, how you wound up here.
Yeah. I've had a really great career. I always blamed my dad. My dad was the reason I got into the nonprofit sector. He owned his own business, did really great things with his twin brother, as we talked about. They also were really heavily community minded. And that just I kind of fell into it in college. I started volunteering in high school, volunteering in college, and just started to have this passion for nonprofit and helping those caring for other people and helping those people who needed it in some way, shape, or form, which led me to a career of fundraising. But, I had this conversation with a cousin recently, and he's been a great coach for me over the years. He's a bit older. And I said to him recently, I was like, I'm not really a great fundraiser. And he was shocked. And he said, he goes, I thought you were like one of the best fundraisers I know. I said, no, I'm really great at the people piece of it, really putting the right people in the right seats and making sure they know where they're going and how they're going to get there, giving them the tools and the resources they need. I'm a great leader of people. I just happened to do that in fundraising because it was what I was passionate about. But I woke up one day about 5 years ago and I wasn't passionate about it anymore. And I was working for one of the best missions in the world, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, right? Like incredible mission and incredible organization, but I wasn't passionate about it anymore. I loved the people I worked with, but I knew I needed to do something different. So I spent about 3.5 years on a journey of trying a couple of different things. I got into real estate. That's how you and I met. Doing some work with my brother, had read the book Traction, which is back there behind me by Gina Wickman, which is all about the entrepreneurial operating system. And I realized I loved what I was doing. I loved what I read in that book and started helping my brother in his business, implementing some of the tools of the OS. I was like, okay, wait a second. There's something here that I'm like really am passionate about. So I was doing some nonprofit consulting, and this client that I was working with an EOS implementer, and they invited me to one of their session days. And I think it was about 90 minutes in, and my eyes were big. I was kind of salivating a little bit. And the implementer, who has become a good friend now, we were on a break, and I was like, so tell me a little bit more about what you do. And she just looked right at me and she said, you should be doing this work. She said, I can tell already. And that led me on my journey to where I am now. That was probably just over a year ago now that we were in that session day. I spent that summer kind of getting myself ready and off to Detroit in August of last year and got trained as an EOS implementer. I've been running my business ever since. So it's kind of like how I got to here today.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank
you. I followed the heart, right? Followed the heart of I knew, and it was a tough conversation with my wife of like, hey, I'm taking a massive leap. I want to quit the golden handcuffs, really good salary, great vacation time, great organization, great benefits. And I wanted to take the massive leap. And as scary as it was, and as scary as the 4 years I've been, with some, financial insecurity, ups and downs, it's entrepreneurial life. She was like, go find it, go find your happiness. And she sees me come home on a Friday like I did, last week, and she gets it. She gets it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I was going to say, it's amazing to hear that supportive partnership and how that trust can help you take that leap. And, part of me is wondering, Ralph, how much the entrepreneurial environment that we were talking about earlier that you grew up in led to that courage, self-assurance as well to leave those golden handcuffs. Because what I was really surprised about too, the other thread I'm hearing is that you loved the people you were working with.
Loved them.
So it sounds like it was really the work itself wasn't giving you energy. Because a lot of people I talked to your point from earlier, like, yeah, the job's okay, but oh my gosh, I have some wonderful people here. So I don't think about leaving because it's just great to work with these humans. And when you feel like you have trust, that can give you that autonomy, the flexibility, some amount of work-life balance, depending on the overall company culture. But the people who know you're working hard, they're working hard, you're all in it together, rowing in the same direction. And then you had the shared purpose of St. Jude's. I mean, one of the world's foremost nonprofits. So
without a doubt.
Yeah. So what do you feel like was missing specifically? What comes to your mind?
You said it a little bit. I think for me, some of it was that entrepreneurial. Could I do it? Could my dad did it? My brother Mike done it for years. And at that point was starting another business with my nephew, his son. And I really had this entrepreneurial drive to do something. And I didn't know what it was yet. And that I just was like, I want to go, I got to go try. I got to go try. Gary Vaynerchuk says all the time, like, doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60, go try it. Go reinvent yourself. If that's what you need to do to go live your best life. Go do it. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And so it's the entrepreneurial lead. I was like, I got to do it. And so I couldn't put my finger on what was missing because I had a great team. I loved working with that team. Still talk to good number of them today. Some of them have worked on consulting projects with me or I with them. I coach a couple of them still, and then they coach me back in the same vein, really. And so great people. And I just knew something was missing. Couldn't put my finger on it. And I think it was that entrepreneurial spirit of like, it was in there somewhere. I just didn't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, but I've got to try.
I don't know, but I've got to try. That's what it was. I just didn't know what it was. But I could get up in the morning and be like, I used to say, I get to go to work today.
Yes.
I get to go to work today. And I couldn't say it anymore. It turned into, I have to go to work today. In part of it, I'll tell you truthfully, I was traveling about 75% of the time for work, like leaving the state of Connecticut on a jet plane. I was in Memphis probably every other week for years at a time, or somewhere else in the country. And I also, the other piece of it for me was family. I got married late in life. My wife had 3 kids. So I talk about my kids or my stepkids. And I was gone 75% of the time. And I got married because I really loved my wife. I really loved her kids. And I wanted to see them more and be around them more. And that was not allowing me to do that. And so that missing piece of like, I don't know what it is. And I wasn't spending time with my family. It was really, truly easy decision. It was January of 2019. And I woke up one morning, I called my boss. I said, okay, I'll be done in March.
Wow.
And I gave him 2 months and an amazing culture. It was hard to leave. My mother-in-law lived with us at the time, and she died February 15th of that same year. And really my last weeks were spent taking care of her and, grieving her loss. And they were like, you got to take care of your family and yourself. I mean, it doesn't compute. Like, why do you leave great people, great culture, great mission? It's all right there, Yeah. So that's it. And I think I went to my parents, my dad, watching them, my mom, she had a similar passion and just drive for doing what was important and what was right. So it made me cry this morning.
I appreciate you sharing this, Ralph. It's incredible to hear this courage. I'm gonna guess you were scared at some point too. Like you didn't have just bubbling self-assurance that, I know I'm gonna make it.
Every day, terrified. Even tonight, 4 years later, my EOS business is going well. It could be going better. But I think every entrepreneur is going to say that. We could be doing better. What else can we be doing? I could be doing more. I mean, every day is fearful because if I don't do it, who will? Right? Yeah, my wife works. She has an income. That's great. But we've got to be doing, and there's fear every day, but it's what gets you out of bed, I think. Right? It's not letting that fear consume you. It's letting that fear drive you and push you. And that's what that's what we got to do that's the engine. The fear is the engine.
Reminds me of I think it's often attributed to the Cherokee tribes, but sort of indigenous Native American wisdom, the story around the 2 wolves. And they speak to, we each have 2 wolves inside of us, the wolf of love and the wolf of fear. And the story I've often heard as a grandchild is asking a grandfather, well, how do you survive? How do you not be, overtaken by the wolf of fear? And he said, well, the wolf that thrives is the wolf that you feed.
Oh, I love that.
And so how do we go about feeding this wolf of love? Because it's, in my experience, not a lot of the cultural messaging that we're getting.
No.
Right? To have this abundant mindset and to have courage. And the quote I have up on my LinkedIn at the moment anyway is from Howard Thurman, who's an activist. And he sort of says, don't do what the world needs. Find what you love and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I'm really hearing you speak to that. Like, I get to go to work. That's what we want to be moving toward. Right? And there's a lot of variables and a lot of factors we've got to be, based in reality as well, and take care of ourselves and our family. And how can we chip away and learn and grow, and then take small risks, and then maybe a big risk, and having a partner to support you so you're not totally alone jumping into the abyss can be really valuable too, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. I mean, how many people do you talk to? If you talk to 10 people today and you ask them, do you get to go to work today? How many of them are going to say yes? Do you get to go to work today?
Right.
Right? How many people talk about that? Well, yesterday was Monday night anxiety and maybe a little Celtics anxiety, but
It's a tough game.
that's a tough game. Yeah. But how many talk about that Sunday night anxiety, right? Of like the panic attacks that sit in on Sunday night because they got to go to work the next day. I was excited. I mean, was getting to talk to you this morning. I was really looking forward to this conversation and just thinking about some outreach I got to do to some clients and prospects. And I've got a text before that some folks I met with last week or they're ready to get going and they want to start their EOS journey. I mean, I can't wait to get started with that. They didn't have that anxiety of oh God, I have to go to work, right? I mean, I also walked downstairs to my basement to my office, so my commute was a lot easier than most. So,
Sure.
you
Sure.
know, so
Well, it's these phrases of I have to, or I should,
mm,
even I need
yeah,
to some degree. One of the ways I like to reframe those is, well, there's always a because I want afterwards underneath that, right? There's a subconscious need or desire, something we're trying to get to that we believe that will give us. My question is often, how connected to that are we? Can we remember? Are we aware? Well, I need to go to work because I want to provide for my family and I want to set myself up for retirement. And the short term and long term come in here. And do I believe this is giving
right,
me the best chance of thriving, of feeling alive, of finding things, or are there other things that I could be doing? And again, it can be really hard to make the time to sort of acknowledge, be honest with ourselves. Yeah, I'm really heading toward burnout right now. I'm feeling exhausted. I feel like I'm just on this hamster wheel, not getting anywhere. How can I carve out 5 or 10 minutes a day to do a little learning, to reach out to
right,
someone new, to do something different? But that can be really hard. It takes a lot of prefrontal cortex, executive functioning
hmm
energy to break out of our habits and behaviors and not just understandably the moment that we have finished everything we absolutely have to today to
right,
flip on the TV and just like, I need to relax and chill or go to bed or whatever it is. I get it. And it's amazing how far tiny steps can get us if we set an intention, begin to experiment and start chipping away. And that's the kind of work I love helping people do in life from scratch and in business. And I'm getting
yes.
curious to ask to really ask you to start to help us learn a little bit more about how you'd go about doing that. So you've got this passion for it. So give us a little bit more about EOS.
I'm going to step back and tell a quick story. I'm not ashamed to say that, I ebb and flow with exercise and weight and, need to do some work today. Years ago, I joined Weight Watchers. I did Weight Watchers. And the thing that stuck to me the most was the coach I was working with at that time said, a penny is the smallest currency of change that we have in our society. And if you just make that tiniest bit of change, you will have impact.
Hmm.
And that was, instead of eating a chocolate bar, eat a celery or whatever that thing was, to make a tiny change and it will have a positive impact. And I've carried that with me. Oftentimes have a penny on my keychain. I actually have a penny with a hole drilled through it on my keychain. So I see it all the time, right?
Cool.
It's the tiniest bit of change. And so it actually has a heart in it, not a penny, but it's always reminding me that just make a small change and you're going to have a positive impact. And when we talk about EOS, one of the things we talk about all the time in EOS is less is more. When we're working with leadership teams, less is more. When we talk about setting your goals for the year, it's 3 to 7, not 27. Because as entrepreneurs, we're like, well, yeah, I could do that. As visionaries in particular, visionaries are so high level, they're looking at everything from 60,000 feet and they have a million ideas. And they show up to every meeting with 20 different ideas and they're ready to go and point their people and start telling them to go chase it. And you got to pull them back, pull on the reins and go, hold on, but what do you have to prioritize? What are the 3 to 7 most important things you've got to get done this year or over the next 90 days? Really focusing them on those things and keeping them laser focused with intention on getting those things done because that's what's going to have the greatest impact on your business. Not all of these like really fun ideas that they want to chase. And
100%.
so we do a lot of work on that. And that goes back to that penny, that small change. You don't have to do $100 bills worth of things. Just do a couple of pennies. Small things are going to have great impact.
Amazing. Yeah. I think I
So
want to say it's a Warren Buffett quote. If you have 15 priorities, you don't have any.
it might be, I think you might be right on that. Yeah, you just can't. So we talk about rocks in EOS. Rocks are 90-day business priorities, right? And I'm sure you know this context, but it's take that glass cylinder, and what we do every day is we fill it with sand and water. We just start responding and reacting to everything that's going on, and we don't get any of the big stuff done. And so with EOS, you say every 90 days, reset your rocks, reset those 90-day business priorities, start with the big things, let the little things fill in. It's about just keeping you laser focused. And again, it's 3 to 7 rocks for the quarter. What are those big things you've got to get done in the next 90 days? If you don't, it's going to have a massive impact. And then, we teach other ways of dealing with the sand and the water and the tiny stones that are coming in. We teach you how to deal with those things, but stay laser focused on the big things, right? Because if you have 15 priorities, you got nothing. Less is more. And it's so scary, especially for a real true visionary entrepreneur to think about. Wait, you want me to do less? I'm going to get more out of it. It's really hard.
It's counterintuitive.
It's really hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally counterintuitive. It's fun to watch too. I mean, it's real fun to watch. I think I mentioned earlier, my brother did a big open house, probably 200-300 people at this house he just renovated on the shoreline last week. And one of my clients was there, and he's a home builder, and he's looking around. He's a production home. So, they've got a process that they do in their homes, and his homes that he builds are stunning, but I could see his eyes looking around, and he's like looking all over my brother's house. For my brother, his houses are canvas to him. That's his art. And my client is a visionary. He's getting all excited. He's like, well, we could do, and I was like, no. And he's like, but we could. I was like, this kept pulling him back because I knew what it was going to do to his team when he went back to the office and said, hey, I saw this house and we could do all these really cool things, right? And it was fun to have the conversation with it, to see his excitement. And he said he wants to think about other ways he could use that visionary spirit so it doesn't derail his business.
Yes. Right. Putting those boundaries. I work on this with some leaders, the structure. And one of the fears I hear this from people in their lives, just on a day-to-day basis, and then leaders at work. Well, how much intention or planning time should I take? I always invite folks to start, well, let's just set an intention. Let's write down the most important thing and have that as a reminder, the most explicit thing. That's a really helpful first start.
Yeah.
And then how many layers down do I go? Do I dive in fully with Ralph and set up this whole entrepreneurial operating system? Or do I just, set my 3 priorities? And the resistance I often hear, Ralph, is, well, things come up and I need to respond to them. Part of my job as the leader, as the founder, when my family, kids are sick, something comes up, I need to react to that. And planning can just get in the way because then I'm trying to hold on to this plan where what I really need to do is flex and respond to the situation. And so it holds some of us back from doing any planning at all because it can feel like it limits our freedom. And I love this phrase, freedom within structure, but it doesn't inherently just clarify, well, how much structure, how much time do I take to plan? Because I need to spend the rest of the time trying to execute that plan and then dealing with, putting out fires, responding to things, reacting when things come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what EOS does for my clients and for, the 20,000, 22,000 companies around the world right now running on EOS we're real. It's realistic to the fact that you've got to have that flex in there. But what tools and disciplines and resources do you have to deal with those fires as they come? So you talked about structure briefly, and in structure, what I hear is we talk about our accountability chart. What are you accountable to and what are you accountable for? It looks a lot like an organizational chart, but at the end of the day, it's about what are you accountable for? Because when multiple people are accountable, nobody is.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to help understand. And so that visionary may be saying, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. Well, do you, or somebody else have that accountability? You just need to let them have it. So often what you see in organizations and entrepreneurial organizations is the entrepreneurs here running the business, and they're selling the business, and they're down here and they're running the day-to-day operations of the business, and they're just running all over that accountability chart. And everybody's like, wait, who do I report to? Who am I accountable to? What am I accountable for if they're doing my job? And it creates this chaos. So we put that structure into place. It's one of the first things we do when we start to work with the leadership team is put that accountability chart. One person is accountable for each thing within the organization. Doesn't mean they have to do it all. They're just accountable for making sure it gets done. Maybe they have a team under them that they delegate to. Maybe they have a consultant, or they have an outsourced, partner that they delegate to, or a vendor. But they're accountable in making sure that the sales and marketing happens, or that the operational component happens, whatever that is, and designing that visionary seat for the visionary. What are they best at? What do they do? Let them go do that. Because when they get down in here, they create chaos because they can't stay engaged long enough. And so we do that. And then we look at other tools that allow them to deal with the fire. So we have a process called ES, which is identify, discuss, and solve. And when your issues, your opportunities, your challenges pop up at you, how do you attack them? How do you deal with them? So you make them go away for good. We teach leadership teams how to IDS, identify your issue, discuss your issue, solve your issue. So it goes away forever. We give you that. So it's your firefighting tool. IDS is your firefighting tool. And so how do we help you do that? So it takes discipline. The tools and the concepts of EOS are simple. Implementing EOS is not, because it takes discipline and hard work. You've just got to be committed to running your business on a system, whether it's EOS or anything else, running on a system that's going to provide you the structure, the discipline, the accountability.
Absolutely. Yes. Discipline is one of my favorite words. I know it's can be an activating word for many folks, whether it reminds them of military or some family structure that they grew up in, or church or something else. But I love the term relaxed discipline. So instead of grasping our fist tightly, right, I must always stick to this plan, or the opposite, just letting it go completely, right? You open your fist, you open your hand, it all falls down. The way I think of it is, how do you hold this intention, this plan gently, with intention, but without gripping it too hard, right? So just an open hand, kind of holding things. Like, I'm caring for these things. Sometimes I need to move around. If I'm gripping on too tightly, I'm inflexible. And I like the word harmony over balance, but that balance is extremely hard to achieve. And part of what you're talking about is changing our behavior, which in my experience 100%. Is extremely challenging. And some of us seem to have a little bit more discipline, or when we can get clear on what our values are, I think, and really hold that in our heart, remember often enough to keep moving in a new direction slowly but steadily. That's really helpful. But that's really challenging. And I'm wondering what you've seen, or what you might hope anyway, to help anyone who's struggling with, really starting this process of putting in the big rocks and slowing down enough, and trusting yourself, trusting the people who you might be delegating to, holding people with caring accountability is the term I like. I've got your back. That's why I'm checking in. It's not to babysit because I don't trust you. It's the opposite. It's because I care about you and I have your back. But all these messages are, if it's not the way we've been doing it, Ralph, it's a lot for us to try and adjust to and adapt to.
It is. There's so many things that you talked about that I'm like,
sorry,
I'm intrigued by. No, it's good. When we talk about discipline, we talk about discipline and, you remember you use that word and instead of but, right? Discipline and accountability. Those two things go hand in hand, right? And I love your analogy. It's not this hard fist. Discipline can have such a negative connotation. Issues can have a negative connotation, but it's not. It's discipline and accountability. Issues and opportunities are available to you, right? And tackling those things. When we approach EOS with a company, we start by working with a leadership team. So I work with leadership teams. I've got one company that's literally 2 owners and that's it, the 2 employees, right? And I'm working with them, and I've got clients with 170 employees. I work with the leadership team because I want them to learn it. I want them to understand the tools and the disciplines of EOS, and I want to get out of their way. But ultimately, I'm trying to teach them about that accountability, how to hold each other accountable. So they aren't the only ones who have rocks each quarter, but everybody in the organization ultimately will have rocks. And there's places for them to be check in on those rocks on a weekly basis. Are we on track? Or are we off track? Are we on track or off? And how are they holding each other accountable? The change aspect is really difficult. Getting first that leadership team to all agree, yeah, we need this, number one. Number two, then getting them all to the place of saying, we're going to commit the time to do this because it takes time. So I work in full session days with my clients. And so we've got to schedule out full session days. And when I start working with a client, we do 3 full session days over 60 days. And that's really intentional. We start with day 1. I teach them a whole bunch of stuff and I send them away with homework and go learn and practice and see how it feels, try it on. And then we come back together about 30 days later and we check in on all that stuff, teach a bunch more stuff, and then come back another 30 days. It's not all at once, teaching them a semester's worth of work in one day. It's really spaced learning opportunity for them. So they can go into their business, try it, come back. Hey, this worked, this didn't work. Help us a little bit more with that. Teach them some more things, go back into your business. And so that's how you start to get that change to happen. Get them comfortable with it, the leadership team, to the point where they start to teach it using the same language throughout the company. So everybody's on the same page. It's about getting that vision all unified. So that leadership team is all on the same page about their vision. They can then sell it. Think about parenting, right? How old's your oldest now?
Almost 3.
Almost 3. So you're not quite there yet. You're going to get to that point where, you and your wife are saying, we got to be on the same page when we're having the conversation. We got to be delivering the same message. You're probably pretty close to that now, or else you're going to confuse your kids, right? If you don't have that same unifying message, same language, they're going to be like, wait, what did I learn? What is this? Right. And that's the same thing in a company, trying to get that leadership team to be good parents and teach their kids or their employees.
Yes. That alignment that you're talking about.
The alignment. Yeah. And it's what drives the discipline and accountability. Right. It drives that discipline and accountability. So.
And it takes enough space. I'm loving your model of several days over a few month period so that there can be enough conversation, enough communication. This is what I often see is this rush. Like, well, we have work to do. We're trying to build this plane while we fly it. And there are a lot of tasks to get done. So I'm sure there are many leaders who would take a full day out of the business. Say, absolutely not. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And part of my question becomes, what's the cost of not doing so? But I also want to acknowledge, well, I've tried stuff like that before and it hasn't worked. So then I guess I'm wondering how you build that trust, or even like what type of leaders you love to work with, Ralph? Like, what are some of the identifying, because I struggle with this to some degree too. I kind of say open-minded and open-hearted leaders, right? Those with a growth mindset. It is very broad. Maybe you self-identify that way, but it's not like those who are specifically in this manufacturing industry, this size company. I know you say small and medium companies, but who do you really love to work? What have you identified so far?
I mean, I think we start with, companies with 10 to 250 employees, but you heard me say I have company with 2. And then, we certainly work with companies that are far greater than that, up to a couple thousand, really.
Sure.
Which, design EOS, the sweet spot is those companies with 10 to 250 employees. For me, it is about humbly confident leaders, right? Confident, they're open-minded, they're willing to be open and vulnerable, not just with themselves, but with the people around them.
Yes.
Right. I'm sure you've read the book, The No Asshole Rule.
I haven't. No, that one's new.
You haven't. Oh yeah. So it's essentially, like humbly confident. Like, I want you to know, your stuff. You're good at what you do. Your team's good at what you do, but there's something missing. You've got to grow. I met with a prospective client last week, and 3rd generation business. I met with the 2nd and 3rd generation, and the 2nd generation, the dad who's running the business right now, he's been around a long time. He's been running this business since the, I think, 70s or 80s. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knows the business, but the humble confidence in this guy was unbelievable. It was off the charts of just saying, we know we're good at what we do, but I also know we've been doing it the same way for 25 years and it's not working for us anymore.
Nice.
Right. And we need this. And I talked about accountability chart and structure. He's like, we need that. Like, everybody's running everywhere and he's doing everything and everything's in her head and we got to get it out of it. He just was so humble to say, I don't know it all. And running the business the way I did 25, 30 years ago is not going to get us to where in 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. And that to me, you are the kind of person that I want to work with. I've met owners and breeders of businesses and entrepreneurs, and I've thought, this isn't the right fit for me. Might be for one of my colleagues, but it's not the right fit for me. That's okay. That's the abundance mindset you talked about earlier, right? I am not for everybody. I know that. I've done my sales pitch to prospective clients and they've ultimately decided to go with somebody else. And I celebrate that because they found the right fit for them. That's awesome. I love that they found the right fit for them. And I will find the right fit company for me and vice versa. Right. And so we get into this scarcity mindset of like, I need, and we got another client, I got to get another client. when I legitimately, wholeheartedly believe you as a coach are right for some people, you're not right for everybody. And you have clients or prospective clients, you're like, geez, you're not the right fit. You're not what I'm looking, right? It's that prosperous coach mentality, I think, a little bit. If you've read that book, I mean, great, great book.
Yeah.
And really abundance is like there's work out there for all of us.
Amen.
So
Amen. Exactly.
and I went down a rabbit hole there.
No,
Sorry
that was
about
beautiful. That was beautiful. I really love, as you were talking, I'm thinking of like I just think of abundance as this love-based mindset, and scarcity is a fear-based mindset, right? There's not
Yeah,
enough. I'm not going to have enough.
100%.
I'm not enough, versus the humble confidence, which I first heard about from Adam Grant's recent book, Think Again. So I've loved this term, humble confidence.
Yeah.
And to me, there's some degree of faith that goes in here. And this has been for me, the spirituality that sort of flowed out of my business reading that sort of led more into this mindfulness world and different ways of thinking about what really matters in life and why these smart monkeys messing around on this spinning rock hurtling through space have grown this consciousness, and why we're all making all these concepts up and doing all these things, so much of which is harming each other, and just to acknowledge
Yeah.
as to, cis white males and the privilege that we're sort of operating within to some degree of awareness, but also, ignorantly and blindly on some level.
Yeah.
And yet we're all human beings, as you said before. And to have this faith that the more I give and offer to others, not just ignorantly, right? And just constantly giving at all times, but to have a generous, abundant mindset. The data in my life and hearing from many others shows that pays massive dividends. And to me, that's one of the ways to build faith, is almost to fake it till you make it to some degree. Like, all right, well,
Yeah.
let me just see if I do some things for others, not just thinking about myself, see what comes back to me. And this idea of karma is not often direct, right? So, they didn't just send me a check after I helped them out.
Right. My wife calls it free for service. There's
Hmm.
some days she's like, okay, enough free for service. And it is, one of our core values is help first at EOS.
Yeah.
And when I thought about EOS, when I was considering going on this journey of this entrepreneurial journey with EOS, I mean, my core values, like that help first core value was just bled through me. And again, if I go all the way back to my dad and my uncle and their business and my mom and how we were raised, it was that real true help first mentality. It was give back, help those people around you. So my dad and his brother owned several buildings in the downtown Southington area when we were growing up. I could look back with, I don't want to say dread, but I remember as a kid, the five of us and my dad would pile in the country squire wagon and with snow shovels on it on a snowy day. And we'd go downtown and we'd shovel the sidewalks of the store. And then my dad would say, keep going, just keep going. Because you shoveled the neighbor's sidewalk, whether you own that building or not, you just kept shoveling the sidewalks to help your neighbors. Make sure you dig out the little pathway so people can get to the crosswalk through the piles of snow. And that's what we did is you helped, you gave first. We volunteered at church fairs and church events and all these different things. And that bleeds into my work of help first, right? So when I do my sales pitch, I called it, right? It's really not that. I'm not going to sell you. I'm going to tell you about EOS and the tools and disciplines, whether you hire me or not. Take the tools, take the book. I'm leaving you with stuff. Here's the website. It's all free. You can go download all the tools and implement it yourself. And if you have questions, call me along the way. I'm happy to answer them for you. It's just because, I'd rather you go on that journey on your own than not go at all. Right. And go to rough seas and not be able to succeed. And so if I can help you do that, I'm going to help you do that. There's another right client out there for me that's going to fit well with me, and we're going to move forward on the journey. So,
yes. And just having that energy, I feel like attract the right people to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you can tell me a time that you were more fearful than less fearful in your business. And you're like, wait, who shut the water tap off? Right. Who shut the tap of leads off? And then when you got some clarity, you took some deep breaths and you got back to that abundance mindset, the phone started ringing again. Right.
Yeah.
And, I think we all go through those ebbs and flows of our business. And it's just the reality of life of being a human being, as we go through the journey.
Right. Having people to reach out to. And, for me, when I get into those dips, often I just want to be working harder and getting more done. But the best thing can often be for me to go out into the woods and go for a walk, or to go have coffee with somebody that, I find inspiring. You were talking about sales. I love the idea that great sales is educating and inspiring, not convincing or manipulating.
Yeah. It's funny. I was doing a little follow up this morning, and somebody had reached out to me last week on LinkedIn, like, "Hey, my partners and I need you to come in. Like, we need some help." And I followed up with him. I followed up with me this morning, and I was like, I wanted to say, like, "Hey, I'm not a used car salesman," which is funny because I bought a used car this weekend. Like, I'm not a used like, and I hate to paint that picture of used car salesman because it was a great experience that I had, but like, I'm not a pushy salesperson. I just literally want to help you and your partners get out of this place of feeling like you're pulling your hair out. I don't care if you hire me or not. Like, what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
And it's so hard to get that across sometimes, and without feeling pushy and salesy. Right. And so but it is really truly authentic of like, what can I do to help you? I want to help you get out of that space. And some people might look at you and I as like, well, what are you two doing talking to each other? You might be competitors. No, we're here to support each other in our business. And I refer prospective clients to other EOS implementers because they are better fit. They're more right for them than I am. Their experience is different, right? Their personality might be a better fit, whatever. Their background is a better fit. I want that company to find the right person that they can work with. I might refer them to you. Maybe I just refer the CEO or the COO to you to work with on a one-to-one basis. We're not competitors. We're all here because we have a passion for helping these businesses grow and these leaders grow in their work. And, however we can all work together to do that, I think is pretty awesome.
Exactly, Ralph. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of there's some research out there that, and I think of this as a facilitator. I've given a lot of workshops and done a lot of speaking, and sometimes it feels like I nailed it, and other times I'm pretty sure a few people fell asleep. And I've just read some research about, I think it was specifically around teachers and education, but this idea that some highly trained professional, PhD, gobs of experience, can get up in front of a group of students, kids, adults, and share something with, again, all this experience behind them. And when they study that versus a peer who's a few years into it, who's looks maybe the same or has been through a lot of the same experiences, and goes up and shares that material with far less experience and maybe a little bit more clumsily, the impact, the actual takeaway, and the ability for the people in the room to then apply what was shared goes through the roof with someone who's more relatable versus this amazing expert. And not to say I deeply value the elders in our community, and there's a balance in here, but to your point, that relatability, and going back to our theme of authenticity, being ourselves and relating as best we can in a real way, has a greater chance of making impact than razzle dazzle trying to impress. Let me show you my full CV.
Yeah. It's funny, years ago, I gave a presentation. I was asked to do a presentation to the entire staff of St. Jude.
Wow.
Right. So there's about 1,200.
That's fun.
And I was like in panic mode, and I was on stage with the chief information officer, the CEO, the COO, chief marketing officer. I mean, like, there's the C-suite all across the board.
Wow.
Right. And the night before, we went and practiced. We had to do a practice, dry run, and I completely fumbled the whole thing, completely messed up. And I was like, oh my God, like losing sleep that night. I've got to do this massive presentation. The funny thing is, when we were backstage the next day, right before, the anxiety in that space of all the chiefs who I looked up at, like, my God, these people are like, they're so experienced and they're so polished. They were human beings backstage. They were human beings who had the same anxiety and fear that I did. And when they walked out onto that stage, they nailed it. And when I walked onto that stage, I nailed it. And backstage, we were all just the same. And guess what? On stage, we were all the same as well. Funny story to that same year, there was a panel discussion later in the day on that same stage. And being a total human being, you'll probably edit this out. One of the members of the C-suite, I won't even call it their title, got up during the panel discussion, walked off stage, and next thing everyone's like, your microphone is on. He went to the bathroom and left his lavalier mic on.
Wow, that's more visceral than like COVID on Zoom, going to the bathroom and flushing or something. Yeah. That's you're in the same building.
You're in the same building. 1,200 people are in. Wow. And again, we're all human, right? Yes. He came back on stage. The CEO had a field day with it. Everybody laughed, and a very human moment. Yeah. We all screw up. We all make mistakes. We have to be humbled by that. I had an experience recently, and I won't go into detail, but it was a humbling experience. How I thought I was communicating, doing the right thing. Perspective, right? The fresh perspective. Somebody else's perspective didn't see the way I thought I was. We have to be forgiving in this world. And I think you've said it a little bit that, we're not seeing a lot of that today. And so my piece, my part is like, how do I do that? How do I bring some of that love into the work that I do? Right. And you do that. That energy comes literally through the screen and, and through our conversations. When I met you over real estate, it came through. I mean, you're just a caring, compassionate, I guess you'd call yourself a recovering jerk, right? But, we need more of it in the world.
Absolutely, Ralph. Could not think of a more beautiful place to land the plane than right there. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, thank you. Well,
as I said, I didn't think we'd have any struggles finding, a way to fill an hour of time. For sure.
Agreed.
For sure.
Agreed. Is there anything else that, you wanted to speak to that I didn't give you a chance today?
The background, what keeps popping into my head. So really short story, not too short, but when I was in 6th grade, my dad had an aneurysm on his brain, and, lucky for us, he survived. But when my dad died, we did a eulogy. We called it Our Two Dads, because there was the dad before his aneurysm and there was the dad after his entrepreneur. And what really showed, though, after the aneurysm was his passion and love for people. That's what got him up every single day to go to work when he was eventually able to. And he spent 7 weeks in the hospital, in a coma for 3 of those weeks, came home, didn't remember his father had died. So every day he'd learn over and over again that his father had passed away.
Oh, man.
And we'd have to, experience that loss and that grief day in and day out for quite some time. And he, he couldn't take a nap because when he woke up, he'd forget where he was. He didn't, one point he forgot he had kids. And so lots of emotional things that happened for us. But what always stands out for me, and I just felt like I had to share this, is that passion for people is what drove him every day. Once he was able to go back to work at the store that he owned, his passion for seeing and being around people is what drove him day in and day out. And to the extent that when they closed the store, he found ways to volunteer in the community at the senior centers and, playing cards or dancing with the residents at the care center, going to Stop and Shop and just walking the aisles and talking to people and telling jokes, because his passion for people was so important. And I think that's what big piece of what drives everything that I do, is that passion that I saw in him, both before aneurysm and after, but it really exploded after his aneurysm. So,
wow.
Anyway, that was the last thing. It kept popping into my head. So I was like, let me just share that.
I really appreciate it. And, really appreciate
it.
Yeah. It's amazing to hear. It kind of reminds me of this theme that I bring up a lot of. Every problem contains gifts and opportunity. And something like an aneurysm, my dad had a TIA, a minor stroke, at dinner with my brother, out to dinner, and just fell over on the floor and was foaming at the mouth, and like this, unbelievably challenging situation. And similarly, I don't know if to the same degree, but I think it was a bit of a wake up moment, a perspective call, what really matters, what's important. And I know it impacted both of them a lot. And thank you so much for sharing. It's amazing to hear.
Is your dad okay now?
Yeah. Still with us.
Good.
Still around.
Good.
I've given him a couple grandkids.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. Awesome. Well, hey, listen, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity, like I said, the conversation and learn more about you and sharing about EOS, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Agreed. Really appreciate it, Ralph. And I'll put your contact information into the show notes as well. So anybody who wants to reach out is feeling inspired and, would like to learn more, it'll be easy to track you down. And Yeah,
Awesome.
again, really grateful for your time this morning. Thanks for being with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And when it's up and ready to go, I'll be sure to share it out. So
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
awesome.
All right, take care, Ralph.
Thanks. You too.
All right. Well, another big thank you to Ralph Riccio for joining me for this conversation on the Fresh Perspectives podcast. And thank you to each of you for being here with us. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, I'd be so grateful if you'd be willing to take a moment to subscribe, offer any feedback, and share it with a friend if you think they might benefit from listening. Thanks so much for your curiosity. Wishing you courage and compassion.